What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back. So as you can see behind me, I have a new project. It's actually not really a new project. I've had it for a while. I've had it for 7 months now, and I'm just going to be giving you guys an update on it. I'm going to start this channel back up, and it's going to be primarily on the Jeep here. It is a Jeep. It says Jeep or Heap because it's a heap of trash. But I'm going to give you guys just kind of a walk around. So fair warning, anybody watching this video, it's going to be a long one. It's going to be a super long video going over what I've done so far. I've got a lot more stuff to do to it, and I'm going to start videoing what I'm doing to it. So let's get into the Jeep, give you some information, and get into this long-ass video. Okay, so to start things off, I know that the audio sucks, I know the video sucks, I know the editing sucks. I just suck at this. And with that out of the way, get over it. Let's get into the Jeep. So, this is a 1995 Jeep Cherokee, obviously an XJ. And honestly, I don't know if it's a sport or what it is. I'm going to assume it's a sport because it's all manual windows, manual everything. This Jeep has been wrecked at some point in his life. It's got a white fender and just a white front end that they had spray painted green, the previous owner did. So, I don't know if it's a sport. I'm going to assume it is. When I got this Jeep, I will post a picture somewhere around here of what the Jeep looked like. It was a stock Jeep, and now we're up to this. This is about a 6 or a 6.5 inch lift. I don't know, not 100%. I think the springs in the front are 6.5 inch, so I maxed the rear to 6. It must be a 6.5 inch lift. I built the lift other than buying the springs right here. And I'm going to go over everything I've done to this Jeep. I've done a lot to it in the 7 months that I've had it. And I just got it registered and titled. I took forever to get it titled. And the DMV wasn't very happy with me. But it's titled now. It's in my name. And I didn't do any of that until I had it to this point where I could drive it. I should have done it when I first got it. But I didn't. So, let's just walk around the Jeep and start wherever I started. So, with this Jeep, the first thing that I did, again, it's not finished because I need to build some fender flares, but the first thing that I did was I went out and I built myself a bastard pack leaf spring. So I went out and I got I think it was like a 95 Chevy S10 leaf spring pack, and I combined it with my leaf springs, and it gave me like 1.5 inches of lift, I think, something like that, somewhere around there. And that squatted the front end, that lifted the rear end. And that's kind of how I started. That gave me an idea about where I was going to go with this. So that's where I started, with like 1.5 inches in the back. And that was that. So after I got my 1.5 inches in the back, I realized very quickly I was not going to be able to fit 35s on here. And that's what I have right here, 35s. These are 35, 12.5, 15s. These are 15-inch just steely wheels. I think they're like, I don't even know, Pro Comp or something like that. They were cheap as hell. They're like 15 by 8s. So I wanted 35s. I knew overall this Jeep needed to have some 35s under it because it's going to be my trail rig. So anybody watching this video and trying to get some ideas, don't do this to your daily driver. This is not a daily driver. I have driven this Jeep a little bit now, but it's not a daily driver. It's not something I would recommend doing to your daily driver. This is my trail rig. I'm going to be taking this down some trails. There's some local people around here that have a group that I have been following for a while, and I've had trail rigs before, but this is my actual trail rig. It's purpose-built trail rig now. So that's why I got the XJ. I was looking at other vehicles, and the XJ was just ideal for me. I know I could have gotten like a TJ or something with a frame, but I didn't. I wanted an XJ because they're just so readily available. They're about 1/3 of the cost as a TJ, and that's why I went this route. So I did the leaf springs back here, which try and show you guys a little bit of what was going on with this. It's kind of dark down here, but gotta kind of remember what I did too. So this top spring is from the XJ, and I believe that the next 3 springs or so are all from the S10, and I just combined them all, and that's how I went with it. And I used the center bolt down here. Oh, it's dark. But the center bolt down here is out of the S10. And whenever I did that and I kept that, I had to drill through the leaf spring to get this bolt in, because the bolt for the S10 was bigger than the XJ's bolt. And then I also had to get some longer U-bolts, obviously, because I was going to do a body, or not a body lift, but sorry, I was going to do a spacer. My gosh, that was easy for me to freaking figure out. Yeah, I was going to do a spacer underneath the leaf springs, just a 2-inch block. Just going to do a lift block. And I'm cheap, so you're going to see on this entire Jeep that I built pretty much the entire thing. So I wouldn't recommend doing that either. I'm not a good welder. I'm a crappy welder, to put it honest, but it's just what it is. So if it falls apart on me, it falls apart on me, and I've learned. So I went ahead, I built my leaf springs, and I mounted my stock tires onto these wheels, which was just little tiny baby tires, just to get it rolling around on those tires, or on these wheels, without buying new tires yet. So I did that, and then I realized that I had 1.5 inches of lift in the rear, and I was going to need to have 1.5 inches in the front. And I was like, I don't want to have a body or a spring spacer up there, so I was like, well, I'll just bite the bullet, and I'll go with a 6.5-inch spring in the front. And then whenever I did that, I realized that I wanted to do long arms, which you can see a long arm right here. And that kind of put into motion a long arm 6.5-inch lift for this Jeep. That's just the route that I'm going. So I went from the leaf springs to these front coil springs. And these front coil springs are, I don't remember which brand. They're 6.5-inch lift. That's all that I remember. But I bought the leaf, or the coil springs, and I threw those in, and I had the front at 6.5. So then I realized after I had 6.5 in the front and 1.5 inches in the rear had to come up. So I moved back to the rear. And again, this entire rear end right now is just temporary. I'm going to do like an 8 or a Ford 8.8 or something like that. But this entire rear end is just temporary. This is the Dana 35, super weak, and it's just not ideal. So with the weak axle identified, I know that I'm going to be swapping that out, but I needed to get the rear lifted. So I built a lift block. Yeah, I built the lift block. I did not buy one. I should have bought one, but I didn't. So what I did with that is, I can show you this bar over here. This is what I used to build my lift block. This is a 2-inch by 2-inch steel bar, square bar, that is used for like trailer receivers. So I don't know the thickness on that, but that's what I used. So I used that to build my lift blocks. Let me see if I can get a light real quick, and I can show you guys my lift blocks and my temporary shims that I have in there, and I'll explain that all to you. Okay, so here's a light, and I will climb underneath the Jeep and show you my lift block. So this is my 2-inch lift block. I did cap the ends on both, and then I had to figure out my shim angle because I had to get another drive shaft, and those are each 2 degrees, so it's 6 degree total, but I need to get an actual 6 degree, or when I do my other axle, I'm going to actually shim it or clock the spring perch right there to 6 degrees, because that's where I need to be at 6 degrees. So that is the entire lift for the rear end. You know, just a bastard pack, leaf springs, a 2-inch lift block, and 6 degree shims, which sets the Jeep perfectly level 100%. So that's the rear end lift that I have on it. Oh, sorry, that is not. I also ghettoly put together these shackled mounts, or these shackles. So I don't know how much of a lift I put on here. I mean, you can see this is the original shackle right there where the leaf spring would bolt to, and I just took some 3/16 plate and extended it down, drilled the holes, and I capped it on the rear. So that might hold, it might not, it'll probably break, but I'm gonna try it on the trail and see if I can break. I did end up widening where it mounts, because when it was fully drooped or fully flexed out, it would rub right up. Let's see if I can get it in here. So I did flex that out a little bit just to make it not hit. because I didn't want it to hit. So that in total is the rear end lift. So that's how I lifted the rear of the Jeep. Again, this is a trail rig. This is not a daily driver. Don't do this crap to your daily driver. I don't want to see you on the interstate with your Jeep in a ditch upside down and you're laying next to it because you did crap like this and you decided to hit 75 on the interstate. Don't do it. So for the front, what I did was I put my lift springs in, as you can see. So I can get the light down. So I have my 6.5-inch springs in the front. Well, that was great and all, except for my track bar, or panhard bar. It was pulling the axle side to side, and I had to adjust for that. So what I did for that was I had some 2-inch quarter wall tubing and some 7/8 heim joints that I used for my control arms, which we'll get to in a minute. But I had to build another track bar or panhard bar, and I also built this bracket here to drop down so that it was more in line with my steering, but this entire front end is going to be redone. It does work. It works the exact way that it should, but I'm going to redo it. I'm going to get some WJ knuckles for the Jeep because I want to have some crossover steering, and that's all coming soon. So I am going to make a video on how to do that or how I'm going to do it because I've never done it. But this is how I built my panhard bar or track bar. So 2-inch quarter wall with weld-in bungs and 7/8 heims. And then I built that drop down right there. And then I moved it forward as well because my front end is pushed forward like 2 inches. Just because that's kind of where it needed to go. I lifted it just to be centered in the wheel well again. So on that end, it's weld-in bung and 7/8 heim joint. This end, I used the original end. And this collar right here is from the rear drive shaft. And I'll explain that to you here in a little bit. So 2-inch quarter wall, original panhard bar, and an adapter to slide inside of this and the outside of this, and it all welds together. And it's stout as stout can get with that. So that is the panhard bar that located the axle where it needed to be, side to side. Okay, so my buddy had a drop pitman arm. So I think it was like a 3-inch or 4-inch drop pitman arm from his Jeep that he didn't end up using. He gave it to me. I threw it on here to help with my steering geometry. And there's that. I think it's a rough country drop pitman arm, if I'm not mistaken. It might not be, but I think it is. Alright, so into the long arm build. Again, a lot of this is just temporary, just to get it up and going and driving down the road. So this that I have is 2-inch quarter wall DOM. It's way overkill for these 35s and everything that I'm doing, but I wanted it to be stout. So 2-inch quarter wall DOM. And the reason that I went 3-link is because I could not fit a 4-link with my exhaust. My exhaust is right in the way on that side of the Jeep, so I could not fit it. So what I did was I hooked my lower link to the factory mount down here on the axle, and then I bought some of these brackets, which I have cut off, and it's janky as shit, but it's on there. And I welded it to the original cross member, and then I gusseted the back a little bit, just because, like I said, this is just temporary. I'm going to build a cross member with these mounts a little bit higher up in it, or figure something else out. But this is on there for now. So both the driver's side and passenger side lower link are identical from the lower to the cross member. So there is that. Then the upper, I had to get creative as hell because I was cheap and did not want to buy a mount for it. So I did not want to use the passenger side mount because they're weak and flimsy. So I used the driver side mount for the top link. And I went up here so I can get you guys up here to show you what I did. So I just got some brackets and I just built like a box channel. And I had to angle it a little bit so it's not straight. It's angled a little bit. And I mounted it back in the factory spot. And then this is just a nut from one of my Heim joints welded through the box tubing and then to my 2-inch quarter wall. I also plug welded the 2-inch quarter wall DOM to the bung. As you can see, there is a plug weld there. Again, I'm a shitty welder, but it didn't break yet. It's still holding. And then I mounted it up here so I can get you guys up here to see it. I know, I suck at this, but there is the upper link. And no, the bolt does not hit my brake lines, fuel lines, and nothing. It doesn't hit. So, there is that mount for the upper. Okay, so that is the gist of my long arm kit that I had built. So, again, shitty welder, but whatever. I'm going to try it. So that's the kind of overview, as of right now, of the lift. I explained to you my rear leaf springs, my 2-inch block, and my shims, and then my leaf spring shackle I explained. Got my front coil and the front steering track bar that I built, and the long arm tubes. So that is my lift. That is how I got the Jeep to a 6.5-inch lift without a kit. I didn't buy a kit, so all my DOM that I bought was from the local steel supply yard. And then I did end up buying some stuff off, a couple places like the Heim joints, I think was Barnes 4-wheel drive, and there was just a couple miscellaneous pieces that I got from other various places like TMR Customs, BDS Suspension, Speedway Motors, Barnes 4-wheel drive. I got that stuff. So I needed shocks after that, so I got some shocks. These are Skyjacker shocks. Don't know the length. All I know is they were for a Jeep Cherokee with a 6.5 to 8-inch lift. And they still are not quite long enough, but they do work. When I flex this all the way out, the shocks are the limiting factor. So that is my lift that I have. From my lift, I knew that I needed to put some fender flares on here because I had some 35s coming that I was going to get. And with my 35s, I knew that I was going to be stopped on the way to the hills or way to the trail or wherever if I drive this down the road without some flares. So I built some flares because, again, I'm cheap as shit. So I went down to Home Depot and I bought some, I think this is 1/2-inch, just Schedule 40 tube. And I bent it in the shape that I wanted after I cut my fender flares out, because my front has been cut out just to the eyeball it size. I don't know what size. If you guys want to know any measurements on any of the stuff that I'm showing you, I can definitely do that. Just leave a comment down below and I can give you a measurement on anything you want. But I did get some, I think it was, like I said, I think it was 1/2-inch wall, or not wall, 1/2-inch black Schedule 40 pipe. And then I got some, let me see if I can get another light in here, because you guys aren't going to be able to see this. 1 second. Sorry, like I said, I suck at this. So anyways, I got some 1-inch, and again, these are just tack welds because I don't give a shit, but 1-inch steel stock from, again, Home Depot. And I think it was a 4-foot length, and what I did was I just made slices in it to where I could angle it around the contours like I needed. That's how I did the inside of the lip, and then I drilled holes through the plate, and I got some carriage bolts that I welded onto the actual 1-inch plate with some lock washers and nuts on the backside, so these fender flares can come off. And this top plate is, I think, 20 gauge. I believe I got 20 gauge, and I just kind of laid it over it, cut it out, welded it up. Again, I got to do the back ones, so if you guys want to see that, let me know, because I need to do the back one still. So that is my front fender flare, the rock sliders, and yes, it's really rough welded, but it really kind of fits the Jeep, so I didn't grind it down. I didn't try to pretty it up. I just painted it black. So the rock sliders that I have are 2x6, which is really common. Everybody seems to be doing 2x6. 8th wall, just rectangular tubing. And then I kind of took a guesstimate measure. I mean, I did measure, but I didn't know how far I was going to have to cut my front fender back, Didn't know where I was going to notch my rear fenders to. So I just could have kind of guessed at the length. I mean, I did measure, but just guessed after that. Like you can see, it's a little bit long here from where I was going to cut it off. I should have made it shorter to about like here, because that way my fender flare would have lined up with the rock slider, but whatever. So I did contour these at 45s, because if you're going over anything, and I've done it in the past in my other vehicles, that you go over something and you will get a rock or a tree limb or something stuck between your wheel and your tire and your rock slider, and then you're kind of screwed because it won't come out. So this way you can just kind of slide your rock slider over the obstacle, get out of it. That's also why I did 45s on these edges right here. Is the same reason, because if you've got something that, you know, wedges up in here like this, and it's hitting here and it's just a flat corner, it's not going to slide around it. So this way I can slide around it and I can get off the obstacle. So I did just cut out my my rockers and weld these in. That's all there is to it. And then I moved from my rock sliders to my bumpers, because again, I'm cheap as shit. I didn't buy a bumper. So I went down to the local scrap yard or steel supply yard and bought some more of the 2x6 eighth wall, like I use for the rock sliders, for my front fenders or front bumpers. That's how I did that. And then I wanted some receiver mounts, because I'm going to run a winch, and the winch that I'm going to run, I want to carry one winch for this Jeep. I don't want to carry 2 winches. I want one winch, and I've seen scenarios where somebody runs their winch under their Jeep to winch back, or under the Jeep to winch forward, or whatever, and it just totally screws up the undercarriage of the Jeep. I've seen it. So I did not want to run my line under the vehicle. I just didn't want to. So I'm going to have my winch mounted on a receiver that I can run on the front or the rear with just one winch. And I'm going to have a plug for that. And when I do the winch setup, I will show you guys that. So that's why there's a receiver in the front and the back. This is also going to accommodate my license plate holder. I'm going to have a license plate mounted to a receiver tube, and that's going to be where my license plate mounts. So this is the front bumper. I just kind of took a flat piece of 2x6 and set it in here, and then I know that I wanted to angle it just a little bit to follow the kind of the shape of the front end. I wasn't going to actually follow it 100%, but a little bit of an angle would be more ideal. So I just kind of lined it up right here, right in the center of this groove, and I said, okay, that's where I'm going to notch it. And so on the back side, I just took a slice out of it and I bent it in, and I mimicked that on the other side in the exact same spot. And then I wanted to 45 this corner up, so that if I come up to an obstacle, like a big rock or whatever, my wheel would not be blocked by the bumper. I just wanted it to basically all be wheel that was going to hit. And as you can see, for the most part, that's what it is. I mean, I have a little corner piece there that might hit something, but that's basically there just to protect my light if I run into something big. So, and again, both sides are mimicked, so it's the exact same on both sides. So I just took the same 2x6 and I just kind of cut it down and then angled it up and terminated it right here on the edge of where my kind of fender was. And that's that. That's the front bumper. The way that I secured it was 2x6 channel. I welded it to the bumper itself, and then I drilled the holes for the mounting points for the original bumper and bolted it there, bolted it in place, and I went through and welded it to the unibody frame of the Jeep, just so it would never come off. I mean, not without tearing the entire Jeep off, and I did that on both sides. So that's the front bumper on the Jeep. Sorry guys, I told you it's going to be a long-ass video, and it is. I'm just going over what I did with the Jeep so far, because like I said, I'm starting back up with this Jeep on the channel, and I'd like you guys to know what was going on with it and my shitty work I'm doing to it. So, the rear bumper, again, 2x6 steel. Same thing I did for the front. Same thing I did for the front. I angled this up. I think I angled it up to where it was about 2 inch on the front and the rear. So I just kind of went from wherever it was up to 2 inch. That's how I left it. And then I just had some, I think this is what, 3/16 steel that I used to box in the underside of this because there was a gap here. I lined it up with the bottom of the hatch. That's where I attached it, and then I needed to fill this in. So that's how I filled it in, with just some like a thin, like steel stock. I did the cut and fold on the rear fender, and I knew that I wanted to build something across here. That way I didn't land down on a rock and crinkle this up, shatter my rear glass. So I just wanted something here. I'm not saying that's going to save my rear glass or the back of this Jeep. It's probably not, but I felt like it might. So this is just, that's all I had. I had some 1x1 square tube, and I just took 2 pieces of it, laid it together, welded it together, and ran it across the length that I needed. 45, attached it to the bumper. I did that on both sides. Kind of ghetto. I don't care. That's just the way it's set up. The way that I attached it to the Jeep itself, see if I can open this hatch up real quick, is where the original bumper attached. It wasn't going to work for me, just that flat steel. So I needed to figure something out. So what I did was, this Jeep used to have a hitch on it. And I took the piece that I cut off here, which is kind of thick and steep or tall, but there's some holes in the frame rail for the receiver hitch to have some slide-in bolts. They were inside the frame rail, and that's what attached the receiver to the unibody to kind of sandwich it together. So took that, welded some nuts in it, in the same location, and I walled out that hole on the back of the Jeep on both sides so that I could weld these 45s to the back side of the bumper, slide it in, and bolt it in. And that's how the bumper's attached in the back. But because I am going to have a receiver back here, I also wanted it a little bit better than that. So what I did was I just went out and I got some, I think this is like 1.5 inch steel stock. And I think it's, I want to say 3/16 or 1/8. I don't know if it's 3/16 or 1/8 thickness. But I drilled the holes and I bolted it through, you know, the plate and then into the mount for the bumper. Again, that wasn't quite enough. So I went through and along this edge, I just welded it all to the body of the Jeep. So this bumper, in theory, should never come off. And if it does, then I deserve to lose the bumper because I'm doing something crazy with it and the bumper deserves to fall off. So I probably will lose that bumper, but whatever. I needed a CB antenna mount, so I built that as well. Again, they're cheap. You can buy this exact same locational mount, but I am cheap as shit, and I just had some steel left over. So just took some of my, I think it was 3/16 or 1/8 again, and I just made a box, is what I did. And then, because I shouldn't have closed my hatch yet, I ran some steel flat bar across here. It notches down a little bit and then runs over to here. So it actually runs behind this one and behind there, and has a flat bar that holds it up. This is where my CB antenna mounts, and then it goes through here. It goes through where the tail lights are, and then through this back panel, and then into the Jeep and to my CB. So that's how I got my CB mount. Moving on, so my front differential, see if I can climb underneath this Jeep. So my front differential, or not my front differential, my front drive shaft was actually long enough with this lift, barely, but it is long enough. My rear, on the other hand, was not. So I needed to get a slip yoke eliminator. This one is a rough country slip yoke eliminator. I have a brand new Rugged Ridge slip yoke eliminator sitting on the bench, but it's missing the main shaft. And nobody can get me the main shaft for it. So I ordered that originally because I wanted the Rugged Ridge over the rough country. Not for any other reason than I feel like the Rugged Ridge was a better brand. But they came missing the main shaft because UPS, being fantastic like they are, they damaged the box and lost the main shaft. So, main shaft was gone, had to order the rough country. Either way, got a slip yoke eliminator in there, and it works. But then I had to build a drive shaft. Again, I'm cheap as shit. I built my own drive shaft. So I am running a Jeep XJ front drive shaft in the rear, but it was not long enough. So to accommodate for that, I went out and I bought 2 drive shafts. I cut them in half, and then I sleeved the inside and I welded them back together, and I did not get it balanced, and somehow miraculously it doesn't vibrate at all. There's no vibration from this drive shaft. There's that. It's got new U-joints on the front and the rear drive shaft all the way through. So there's that. I also got a longer brake line from a Dodge Dakota, which I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to work. I hope it's going to work. So there is the underside of the Jeep and what I've done. Now that I've got the Jeep, at this point, it is running and driving and moving under its own power. Now it's time for me to do some of the stuff that I want to do as far as accessories go. So I knew that I wanted some form of switch panel. Let's hop into the Jeep. I can show you my switch panel. Ugh, get in here. By the way, I was missing those when I bought the Jeep. So those are off a donor Jeep. But I also got a clinometer, or clinometer? I don't know how the hell to say that. It tells you your angle, tells you when you're gonna fucking tip over. Got that. Got my CB mounted here. It's the best place I could find to mount that damn thing. I wanted to mount it up here, and I couldn't, so it's down here. Yeah, that's just where it's at. But this is my switch panel. It's just this, oh man, you got a glare on it. You can't see shit. There you go, kinda. 6-gain switch panel is what they call it. So, I don't know. That's just a switch panel. And what it's gonna run, if you can see this, is, oh god, air on the top right. So top right to the bottom right. I got air, rock lights, the rear, which is gonna be on the roof, the roof lights, which are gonna be on the roof, my squares, and then my windshield, which is gonna be on the roof. So, those are the 6 switches that I'm going to run. This kit, I think, was like $89, so $90 for the kit. And it came with the switch, with all the little stickers, because they're little stickers you can replace them with. You gotta choose which ones you want to run. And then the control panel that I have under the hood, which we'll get to that here in a little bit. Also, another issue that my Jeep had was that the oil pressure gauge would not work right. It kept reading freaking like 100 pounds, and it wasn't. And it go from 100 to 0. So I replaced it with another factory one. It still read wrong. And I said, screw it, and I bought a mechanical gauge. And I threw it in the dash, and now it works. So I combated that with a mechanical gauge. Solved. All right. So as far as the inside goes, I think that's it. That's really all I've done. I don't think I've done shit else in here other than just, you know, my gauge, or my switch gang panel, my clinometer. They replaced the radio, but nobody gives a shit about that. My CB radio, and that's it. And then my oil pressure gauge. So that's that. I do have a couple of things hooked up to the 6-gain switch panel. Like, for instance, I do have my square pods sitting here just because I'm going to have a light bar on the roof, which is going to shine straight forward, and I needed something to angle out. So if you can see this, they're not straight, they're angled out. I have one on each side. They are angled out so that they can kind of project outward to the side, forward to the side. That's wired into the panel. And then I also do have an onboard air system, which I will show you guys that. It is really shitty work, but it does work, and it does everything I need it to do. So let's show you the onboard air system that I have kind of cobbled together in this Jeep. Okay, so with the hood popped, here is my onboard air system, because I did not want just a regular 12-volt onboard air system. I got an AC compressor, and don't mind that little bit of garbage there. That is like some plumber's fucking putty or some shit. It's rock solid, but The only reason I put that on there was not because it was leaking. I put it on there so that it would not accidentally unthread itself, even though I don't know how it would. I put it on both sides. I use a shit ton more on the outside than the inside, but whatever. So I just put that on there so that it wouldn't accidentally unthread, because I could not find the right thread adapters for these. Whatever. So this is another Sandin 709 off of a Jeep Cherokee, and I did not realize it when I bought this from the junkyard, but there are two different sizes apparently, the 709 back housing. They both are rear exit, but this one's a lot shallower. I don't know if that makes a difference. It still works exactly where I want it to. But I mounted it right next to my original, and yes, it's bent on purpose, right next to my original AC compressor, because the Jeep still has AC. But to do that, I had to remove my battery, which used to be in here, and it's not there anymore. It's in the back of the Jeep. So, with the onboard air system though, this is just a 709 Sandin compressor, which you can Google how to make this thing an an air compressor, and there's a lot of videos on it. I did put some grease in there, and then I also put in some oil, because this is just a cap that, I don't know what it was for originally. It just had it capped from the factory. But it's a good place to fill it with oil. So, or a little bit of oil, not a lot. And this side here, this side here is the intake side. So an AC compressor does one function. It sucks in the refrigerant, it compresses it, sends it back out. That's all I'm doing to the air. Sucking in the air, compressing it, sending it back out. And that's all it does. So I did get a longer belt. Let's see if I can show you this belt number on here. Was that K061020, I think was a part number. This bigger number down here, I think that was a part number on this belt. But I need a longer belt to run this the compressor on here. So that's my onboard air compressor, not AC compressor. Onboard air compressor. So this is the intake. So this is where it sucks air from. This is just some like 3/8 outside with or 1/4 inch inside like tractor trailer brake line tubing, and it's not rated for super high heat, so I'm gonna see how it goes in the engine bay. But that runs down and around, and it loops back up, and it comes out, it comes down, and it actually goes down here to like this little ghetto filter that I have. It's like one of those little filters you see, little, you know, the ricers do. You see the ricers do on like their valve covers. Just a little blue filter that goes right there on the valve cover. Well, I have that for my filter for my intake on my air compressor. So, the out, I had my brake line like this, hooked to the out, but this gets hot. It'll send out like 200-degree air. So it was starting to deform the plastic or the nylon or whatever the hell that's made out of. So to deform it, and I realized really quickly that I was going to have to come out with something that would kind of dissipate the heat before it got to the line. So I got some just pipe reducers, because this was like a 7/8 nut on, or 7/8 thread on the back of this thing, and then I reduced it from 7/8 to like 3/4, and then from 3/4 to 1/4 or some shit like that. So that's 1/4 inch line with some elbows. I know it looks kind of janky, and that's because it is. So it goes from here, just kind of, you know, 90 again, and then it 90s again, and then it connects to my airline, which goes down and it goes from my firewall and into the Jeep and into the back where my tank is. So this is the in, that's the out, and the way that it kicks on and off is this pump only runs on one wire. It's grounded through the bolts, and it grounds it to the chassis. So it's got one wire, one 12-volt wire that kicks the compressor on, which engages this clutch in the front. And that one wire, I ran a wire from here all the way to the back, and then from the back all the way to the front. So the wire from here goes to the back to a 12-volt pressure switch, which is 110 off, 140, or no, 110 on, 140 off. So at 110 psi, it'll kick this pump on. At 140 psi, it'll kick the pump off. And that's how that works. So whenever I hit the button inside to kick this pump on, if it's at 110 or 112 psi, let's say, then this pump would not kick on. If it was at 109 psi, this pump would kick on until it got to 140. Same thing as a regular air compressor does. So the way that this thing activates is I hit the button for air on my switch panel, and then that power, the 12-volt power, comes out, and it comes out here, right there. It's got 6 different connectors. This is my box that runs everything. So this is why I chose this setup. See if I can open this up. It's got 6 relays, 6 fuses. Each relay and fuse goes to a, I'll see if I can get this thing closed now. I've done it fucked up. It goes to one of these wires, and that's how that setup works for the switch panel. But so the power comes from here whenever I hit the air button, and it sends power from here back to the pressure switch. And then from the pressure switch, it goes from the pressure switch back up here to the compressor. So that's how that kicks on and off. And let's walk back to the tank real quick. I'll show you my setup on the tank. Again, I was cheap, so this is what I got. So this is just a Harbor Freight like 5-gallon compressor or like tank. It's used for like inflating your car tires. So you can pressurize it to like 120 psi, take it out, inflate your tires, and that's it. So I have this, and yes, I got all of these adapters because I have no freaking clue why. I just do. I've got a shit ton of adapters. I think it's because I had, this is like 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch going into this bung, and from 3/4 inch I notched it down to 1/2 inch, but then I needed 3/4 inch for my fitting to go to 1/4 inch or some shit like that. So that's why it's like, I don't know, it's kind of fucking janky. But I got my manifold here. This is my pressure switch in the back. And then I got my air in. So this is my air in right here. Oh, let's see if I can get it. Okay. So air in comes through my regulator. Not regulator, sorry. Through my filter. And then it goes into my tank. So it fills the tank, and then it gets to 140, and this says, hey, I'm at 140, shuts the compressor off, which is great. So this is a 150 psi blow-off valve. So if something fucks up and it builds it up to 150 psi, this will pop and let the pressure out so that I don't blow this tank to pieces. So I got one line in and one line going out. That's what I got. And then my gauge. So my line out actually has a Y, and it's split. I have one line going to the driver's side, one line going to the passenger side. And that is because I wanted to have an air chuck for my air tools on the driver or passenger side, because this is just a cheap Harbor Freight, like $25 kit. That's what I'm going to run for my airline, for airing up tires, deflating my tires whenever I go on the trail, and then airing them back up when I get done. If I have to replace a tire or change a tire, I can run my air tools off of it, all that fun jazz. So, oh, by the way, here's my battery. These cables you're seeing? Yeah, Harbor Freight jumper cables, like $50. And it runs from the front to the back. Can't get any cheaper than that for a battery relocation. $50. So, that's my battery relocation. But for the air tank, it does run up here. Again, I'm cheap as shit, and it's ghetto, and it works. This is my air chuck, which is hidden now, but that's my air chuck. I just had some, like, I don't even know what the hell size, 2x3 steel tube that I mounted my air chuck to. And then the line runs from there, from the underside of it, to the kick panel, or the plastic liner crap that runs up here, and then it runs back behind the seats. Both sides, driver's side, passenger side, are identical. So I have onboard air to fill my air tank, and then I have my fittings on either side so that I can reach my rear or my front tire, or I can drive it alongside somebody and air up their tires, or do whatever. That's how that onboard air system works. So I just showed you my battery relocation. Let me show you how I did it. Again, I didn't do any videos on this stuff, and I'm sorry I didn't, so it's going to be a long video showing you. But here is my positive connection in the front, because I had to have one up front. I have my alternator wiring, I have my power from my fuse panel, from the factory fuse panel, which I need. All that stuff had to be connected to a positive, so I have a stud here that is not touching the body. Just to be clear, it is not touching the body, because that would ground it and short everything. So it's spaced out, and I just have some like hard ABS plastic that I drilled the stud through, and I recessed it into the plastic so it would not touch the body. And I put a nut on it to keep it so it wouldn't back out with some Loctite, and then I can attach all of my positive terminals right there in the front. That's my positive. The negative runs down here to this body ground. So this wire here is my negative for my battery. And then these negatives here one goes to the motor to ground the engine, and the other one is a negative for, you know, my panel here that I have. And same thing with my positives. I got positives for, you know, my alternator, positives for my panel here, you know, you get the gist. That's how I relocated my battery. The other thing I had to do was when I wanted to mount this here, I wanted it next to my original fuse panel, because if I sell this Jeep, which I doubt I will, but if I do, like I do all my other vehicles, somebody at some point might pop a fuse and be like, where the hell's that at? And then they have no idea where I put that. So it's right next to the original. Yeah. So to do that, I had to move my coolant reservoir onto this side. And that is not bolted down. It is just kind of snugly mounted in there. And I had to get rid of my airbox because I could not fit that right there with my airbox here. So that's just like a fucked up filter that does no filtering whatsoever. Whatever. So that's how I did that. This tube here was not me, by the way. This is just how it came from the previous owner, and I just left it. So it just runs up and it goes into the evap system, or whatever the hell system that one's running to. And then these two are teed together and running over to the same system. And that's that. That's the gist of it. So I think I have now gone over everything that I have done to the Jeep. Let me just go over this in my head and see if there's anything I missed. I think I've gone over everything. Oh, the most important thing, I got some seat covers. Yeah, because you guys care about that. These seats are like destroyed, so I did get some seat covers. Just because I got tired of climbing in and out of this thing and it poking me in the ass. Got tired of that. So, that's the Jeep for now. Like I said, I did the cut and fold. I did cut slices into this and hammer them up. And I'll have to, like, I don't know, weld up each and every one of these, or just like fuck coat it in silicone and leave it. I don't know. Speaking of holes in it, sorry. Funny story. So when I got the Jeep, the little baby Jeep, the guy just, I mean, he sold it to me. He didn't give me a whole lot of information on what he had done, what was gone, like what was wrong with it, none of that. I didn't even care. I walked up, I said, do you have the title? He said, yeah, I got the title. I'm like, okay, here's, you know, I paid $1,200 for it. I'm like, here's the $1,200. Hand me the title. Have a good day. I had no care in the world what was wrong with this thing. I just wanted a Jeep XJ, or some form of Jeep. And this guy wanted $1,200, which was a third of the price that everybody wanted for one of these things. Locally, they wanted like freaking $6,000. So he wanted $1,200, and out the door I went. And the engine at some point was replaced, because that has got a junkyard number on it, and the transfer case is different. So I don't know if they swapped in a motor, a transmission, and a transfer case out of like a 98, because this transfer case that I had is the NP20, I don't know, 203, 209, I don't fucking know. But anyways, it didn't have the regular like press-in bearings like most of them do. It was from a 95, so I don't know. But the funny story is, when I first got it, I was kind of cleaning it out, and I was down here vacuuming. You can't see it, but I was down here vacuuming, and I kept trying to get like this spot out, right? Like right in there, and it wouldn't come out. I tried shampooing it like without really glancing at it, and it wouldn't come out. Like, well, what the hell? Finally, I put my finger down there, I touched it, and it was a hole. And I was like, well, that's fucking weird. So what I did was I went under the Jeep. Let me grab another light so I can show you. Okay, so with the light, see if I can show you this. Right here, you can see there's a bolt with some silicone around it. That was a bullet hole. And I thought it was odd that there was a bullet hole there, but then I looked at the wheels that I had on it, and I realized they were new tires. So, at some point, the guy that had it before me shot through that floor and into the tire. It lined up perfectly with the tire. So he had shot into the tire. And I was like, okay, he had to have shot the tire. That's why he's got new tires around it. Well, when I dismounted the tires myself, and there was still a piece of lead inside the wheel that was just floating around inside the wheel. So yeah, he definitely shot through the floorboard and into the tire, which I just thought was a funny story, because who would have thought that you would get a Jeep with a tire with lead in it that came from somebody shooting through the damn floorboard. It was just ironic and kind of funny. So there's just a bit of funny story for you. But that's kind of the overview. That's the entire overview. Not kind of. That's the entire overview of the Jeep and what I've done to it so far. I do have stuff I'm going to do to it. I definitely need to build my back fender flares. I need to build another cross member for my control arms. I want to do a Ford 8.8 swap in the rear to have disc brakes. And I'm going to do the WJ knuckles and crossover steering that I'm obviously going to build myself because I'm cheap as shit, just like the rest of this. And that way, if it freaking breaks down on me, I can't be cussing at the manufacturer that I bought the parts from. It was all me. So I am going to do that. I also have some rock lights on the way. That's probably going to be the next video. I got some rock lights coming. Got to get those installed. Because I have these, I need to get a roof rack with my front light. I'm going to get a 52-inch light bar, recess it back a little bit because I've had light bars on the roof and they blind the shit out of you if you got it too close to the windshield. So I'm going to mount my light bar for the front, 52-inch. I'm going to have a 32-inch light bar on the back, shining straight back, which is going to be the middle finger for the rear. I'm going to have 2 on each side on the side of it facing outward. It's probably going to be 12 or 14-inch light bars, 2 of them. So I'm going to have lights all the way around the top of the Jeep, these facing the front sides, and then I'm going to have some rock lights shining down. This way, when I'm off-road at night, like I always am, I can see what's going on. So, anyways, guys, this is a long video, and just kind of an update about what's going on, and kind of give you guys an introduction to this project, because I've got a multitude of them. For instance, I have this Frankenstein sitting here in the garage. This is another story. My buddy's car, it's a 2000 Civic with a 2000 Integra front end. And I did the body work on the fenders. It's not done. And the door. Whatever. I'll get into that in a later video. But that's it for now. That's the Jeep. I got some work coming. And I'm going to start documenting it. So hopefully you guys will, criticize me like you always do. But whatever, just criticize me. Get out there on your keyboards and just go at it. So yeah, I'm gonna video what's going on, and hopefully you guys will tune in and see what I got going on. I'm gonna get some off-road videos and footage. I'm gonna try and get with this group around here, for instance, where I live, and I'm gonna see if I can get a hold of them or figure out when they're gonna do it next. But anybody who watches off-roading or whatever probably knows Dirt Lifestyle. Shout out to Dirt Lifestyle, because I have learned a ton from him on building this Jeep, which doesn't show it. So yeah, he has given me a lot of information. For instance, the 10 degrees on the lower arms, all of that information I gathered from him and his channel. But Dirt Lifestyle, Nate, he was actually down here in my neck of the woods. I watched one of his videos and he was down here in Idaho in my town. And I really wish that I had known he was here, because I would have loved to have taken this out and just thrashed the shit out of it to see what would break. I didn't know it, but maybe next time that he comes down, I'll see if I can figure out when that's going to be, because he says he wants to come back down to meet up with the guys from Yankum Ropes and run their Land Rovers together. I hopefully will figure out when that is, and you guys will see all of that together. I doubt it, because I'm a nobody out here. But we'll see. So follow along with this if you want. If not, just don't. It's fine. So as always, enjoy. Have a good day. I'll catch you guys in the next video.